Well, thanks a lot. It's good to reacquaint with some of you, and many of you I've known for years and years and years. What I have for us to just to peek at, this is more information today, but I wanted to share a little bit more on the vision end of things than, projects and stuff like that. And so there are some documents in here that I want you to be able to have available, and I encourage you to read them at your leisure. But if I could just point out a few things related to them, that would be super. The first page is just a covering page, basically saying what is in the package itself. The first document is on an annual basis, the fellowship gathers all our churches together in an annual project. And this year's annual project is a Francophone project. So Project 2014, Refueling Our Mission, is really 5 small projects that make up a larger project. And 5 projects are, 3 are church plants, 2 in the Montreal area, 1 in the Paris area, really close to the Euro Disney in Val d'Europe. A 4th project is a renovation project with a fairly new church plant in Saint Jerome. Saint Jerome is similar to what Barrie is to Toronto, but an hour north, with a lot of commuters. Saint Jerome is that for Montreal. And we have 2 remarkable young church planters doing some significant work there. They bought the sort of old 100-year-old theater right in the middle of town. Before they bought it, it was a club, and I mean they had the big cages with the go-go girls would be dancing over top of the thing. It's a wild place, and they just turned it into a remarkable place for worship. And we're trying to support them by raising some funds for that renovation for that young church family. And then the 5th one is to send an evangelist up in northwest Quebec. The story of our Quebec ministry, our French ministry, is in the northwest of Quebec with our first pioneer missionaries going there. But in recent years, we have 2 churches still up there with no pastors, and they're struggling. And so we're hoping to raise up funds to send an evangelist to sort of replant the seed where it had been planted and give some help and support to these small congregations in that area, and hopefully see them helped and even flourished by a spiritually gifted evangelist. And so that's basically, and right now our churches thus far have remarkably supported this project. We're well on our way to reaching the 150,000, but it might be something you or your church might want to be a part of. The one document I want to spend just a little bit of time on is this one here. It's called the Support for Fellowship Churches. I was in your boots for just over 25 years as a local church pastor, exclusively at fellowship churches. Some of them, as Daryl said, right here in Toronto. This is hometown for me. I love Toronto. I keep telling my wife I want to retire here eventually, and she looks at me with a cockeye, but I'd love to be back here. But the question I was asking, that many people ask in the fellowship, and I wanted to try and answer in the first sort of 18 months of my role in this, is the question, why do we have a national? What do we need the region for? Why do they exist? Why do we need them? Do we need them? And this is believe it or not, it's a small little brochure, but it was a ton of work to get to this little brochure. And anything I'm preparing through our fellowship, I'm saying we're not sending out binders anymore, because I know what I did when I got those binders. You kind of wear, whatever. So anything you're getting from us now is sort of like a brochure, a page. I'm hoping that we'll do that. Okay? I know how busy you are. We're all busy. This brochure basically was a ton of work in bringing our regions and very much the regional leadership involved in the preparation of it. I sat down with Terry Cuthbert, who was in my role for 12 years, not that long ago, and he said just before Christmas, he said, Steve, this document that has been prepared that took about 18 months, you've been able to prepare this in 18 months, but I couldn't prepare in 12 years. And it's not any question about Terry's leadership, because he's a remarkable leader, but I just want to encourage you that we have a new day. There's a new day going on about collaboration and interdependence that I've walked into it at just such a time as this, and I'm absolutely encouraged by it as I cross the country over and over again. I'm hearing this desire for that viral independence that has been so much of the mystique and DNA is I'm hoping quickly dissipating, quite frankly. And a greater, I think, biblical independence and collaborative environment. And so it's been a much easier sort of sit down with regional leaders from across the country, with national leaders, and I mean these regional leaders are often local church pastors, that's what I'm talking about. And the preparation, basically, this is a very brief document, purposefully, intentionally, to basically answer the question, why do we have a national? Why do we have a regional? So I encourage you to read it carefully, but in a nutshell, it basically says this: why do they exist? They exist for the bride of Christ. They exist for the local church. The preeminent thing, this whole thing, Jesus is our king and his queen is the church. We love the church. This is a local church organization. Everything has to be about promoting the local church. And the national can't do that. Regions can't do it. Let's get rid of it. Obviously, this document indicates that we do think there's an important place to play for national. And so this devises, basically there are 3 things national does for the local churches, and 3 things the region does for the local churches. And on one side it's the national, and the other side is the region. And then we actually decide what the primary thing is. We share what does national do in a secondary way to help champion the region's primary role, to help the church. And then conversely, what does the region do in a secondary way to help national fulfill its primary role for the benefit of the local church? So I encourage you to take a look at that. In a nutshell, regions, they're about church health, church planting, church leadership development. And then national comes alongside to try and help them champion. I don't do church planting. National doesn't do that. We've got to get out of the confusion of that. We do church planting internationally. And now we're going to help a region called Quebec do it in the Francophone. But I'll come alongside. So right now, for the first time, I now gather the church planting directors at our cost 3 times a year. So there will be a synergy between church planting across the regions. I think that's a strong thing that we can do on behalf of our local churches and share the resources so we're not duplicating them. And my great hope and prayer is that BC becomes a help to our region in the prairies. It's a little bit smaller, and that FEP Central will be a help to the Atlantic region, which is a little smaller, and that Quebec becomes helpful for starting Francophone churches outside of Quebec, because there are pockets, large pockets of Francophone people in different places across Canada where we can have ministries, hopefully, possibly in the days ahead, local churches that are Francophone based. So, and there's any number of things that we're doing to come alongside of the regions to do their primary things. In national, what are the things our churches in 1963, the churches gathered together, so we want an international ministry, so we care for international, helping our churches to get their international people and really becoming a conduit, a channel to fulfill that church's missional dreams and initiatives. And the documents that I'm going to just mention in the next few moments, they share a vision, but really the large thing that I hope you will pick up from these new direction documents is that our vision is to fulfill your vision. I see us as a conduit, a channel to fulfill that local church's vision. We have some expertise in international, so we'll come alongside you to help to do that. And we've done that with with about 290 missionaries have gone out in these last 50 years, specifically through Fellowship International. Through our fellowship churches, thousands have gone out. In fact, about 10 years ago, they did a study and found that the fellowship per capita sends more foreign missionaries out than any other evangelical denomination in Canada. It just blew me away when I saw it. So our churches are really interested in global missions. And we have the capacity to come along and give some aid and so forth to see that happen on behalf of our churches. The second thing we do is Francophone ministry. Since 1958, we've had this French mission. And just over 100 churches have been planted in that time. Presently, there are 88 churches, French-speaking churches. That's the largest denomination, French-speaking denomination in Quebec today. It constitutes about 9,000 believers. The next denomination is about 60, is the Pentecostals. The Brethren have about 30. Convention Baptists have about 30. But this is in a province of over 7 million people. We're just scraping the bucket. And while you say 1% in this area, in the province of Quebec, it's 0.8 of 1%. If you go to the city of Montreal, it's 0.3 of 1%. 0.3 of 1% is less than the evangelicals in Pakistan, Poland. I mean, it is one of the most secular places on the face of the earth is Montreal and Quebec. And their secular charter is an example of where they're going, obviously. My hope and prayer is that we will continue to do that ministry after the French mission comes to an end at the end of this year. And there's a new way in which we're going to do that. I'm going to share that in the next few months. The third thing we do is chaplaincy ministry. Todd is working as one of our fellowship chaplains along with his pastoral work. But we have chaplains in every imaginable area, from airports to hospitals to truck stops to fire, emergency services. And that's a ministry I thought, upon my arrival, that had been neglected, and we really worked hard to try and boost it and really help our chaplains feel like there is a place for them and give them the support I think they deserve, doing some remarkable ministry. So that little brochure will hopefully help you to say, so when someone's like, what does National do? You can talk about these three things: international, Francophone, chaplaincy, along with some support services that Rob and his department really makes available to the churches. But I'll let Rob explain that. What do the regions do? Church health, church leadership, church planning. And Bobby has actually divided those three things in his staff. Bobby takes care of health, Godfrey takes care of leadership, and Tom, of course, takes care of church planning. So these are the things we are hoping will help our churches flourish by working on these things and supporting our churches. So very quickly, in a few moments I've got, I want to go over these, what I call direction documents. Direction documents. When I arrived 2.5 years ago, I was asking that question, so what does national do, what does the region do? And that's the sort of summation of that larger conversation, quite frankly, with a lot of leaders across the country. But I also said we need to be clear on what does international truly do, what does Francophone ministry truly do, and what chaplaincy. And again, I didn't want to send you a binder because I know you won't read it. I probably wouldn't read it either. But so I've come up in the first about 18 months, we work, and this constitutes actually, I don't want to exaggerate, but probably close to 100 leaders have worked on this thing, right across the country. So it's not Steve Jones sitting down and writing something. I didn't have really a lot to do with the actual writing of it. But I did tell our departments who were working, I said, I want one page. I want one page front and back showing the mission, vision, values, strategy of your department, what we're trying to do for the local church. And the only department couldn't do that was international. They did it in 4 pages because you got a whole host of missiologists and academics, and they just can't say things, pithy and short. And so they gave me 2 pages of definitions of words that are found in the direction document. So wherever you see a footnote, like a 1 or a 3 or an 8, it goes back to the glossary of terms. It just gives you more information. So, but basically, this is the mission, vision, values of your Fellowship International Ministry. And I encourage you to read it. I'll just say a few things and then we'll move on. We are a mission that exists to serve fellowship churches. We don't serve Pentecostals, Presbyterians, we don't serve anybody. We exist solely and only to work alongside our churches, to be a conduit to give you support and aid to some of these marvelous things that you're dreaming about and seeing. So we're here for you, and have I think a remarkable staff who can really be of help to you, to answer questions, to be of help to you when you have some people possibly are thinking going to some area of the world outside of Toronto. We're a mission that is going to typically, historically, and we're going to do this, continue to be this, a mission that's going to some of the harder places. We're just of the opinion that to send some nice North American, and it's expensive to do this ministry, to somewhere, there's got to be a really good reason why they're going there. Because there's a lot of national, in a lot of countries right now, where the nationals can do that work. And so I'm convinced that we need to be very careful with the resources God gives us. And so we are committed, typically, so when you come to us, we're committed typically to those countries that are less than 2% evangelical. Now, in the mission statement it says to strategic populations, we're sending people. There are countries that are maybe 7 or 8, or you go to Africa, some of them over 30% evangelical. But there are pockets or strategic populations, the term we have used, where that's not the case. So the example I use is Ken and Marianne Jolly, who are in Venezuela in the city of Caracas. They've been there for 20 years. Venezuela is around 7 to 9% evangelical. I can't quite remember what it is, but Caracas, and they're working with upper middle class. It's vastly below 1%. That's a strategic population, although in a nation that is evangelized, we will send those. But we want to send to the tough places, where there is the rocky ground. What you're doing, Tim, that's where we want to send personnel. Then we see the added value, the benefit of sending expensive missionaries from country to country. What we want to be is a conduit for our local churches. And so in our vision statement, I'll just point out there is sort of this sort of degradation of support, share, create. What we identified as cooperating churches, coordinating churches, collaborating churches. We recognize there's greater degrees to which a church wants to be involved. And we're saying that's great. So there will be some cooperating churches who say, you know what? Barry's working with Dan Shirk. You're Barry, you good at part of your association to get the Anisis to Lebanon. There will be some churches in this association. I'm really hoping this association are going to grab onto this couple because they're in your association. They're your people. So I brought a bunch of them. I'm hoping you'll grab one. And Barry's working hard at it, and our staff member Dan Sure is working hard to try and raise the sword. There'll be some churches say, you know what, we want to be cooperating as part of the fellowship. This is our family, this is our association. We're sending out someone from Willowdale Baptist Church. We'll cooperate by this amount of money, and we'll pray, and we'd love to hear from them. But there are other churches who may want to go at a greater or deeper level. And this is what I think you'll see in all of these direction documents. I'm talking about going deeper rather than broader. I want the relationship to get tighter in our fellowship, in every capacity. But this is one way in which we can do it. And there'll be churches saying, no, we want to collaborate with the Anisis in Lebanon as they work in this girls' orphanage. And it's a heartbreak. I mean, the culture is such that these girls are left behind, unfortunately. Now, 1 million Syrians have come in as refugees, and Kareem is already in the country trying to deal with that as well. Some remarkable humanitarian ministry, quite frankly, is happening. But the long and short is he wants these Muslim girls to come to Christ, and he wants to start a church out of this ministry as well. But there'll be churches who want to be sending their pastor there, sending teams there, children's ministry, working with these young girls, some who are hurting people. And so going deeper and deeper, and we want to be able to collaborate with those local churches to have a remarkable relationship with these personnel on a field, and your church falls in love with that field. And we're saying there are churches who just want to cooperate, coordinate, or collaborate, and that's good. We're going to work with you at whatever level we want. The last thing I would have just mentioned on this document is there's a big piece at the end about what we're referring to as holistic ministry. As many of you know, FAIR has been our humanitarian arm of our movement since 1974. And areas of relief, aid development, social justice issues are the things that FAIR have been involved in. We're presently in 19 countries with 35 projects. We just put the word out about the Philippines typhoon. And in the last few weeks, our fellowship churches across Canada have sent in over $200,000. And that money has already gone to our two partners, Emmanuel International, which comes out of Stouffville, and ABWE, who have 1,400 Baptist churches already in the Philippines. And their core center is in the core center of the typhoon. And we've just been hearing some remarkable reports just last week about some of the cool work they're doing. But our churches will get those reports, and so FAIR is doing that kind of work. What I'm committing to you is this. Since my arrival, I said, we're going to up the level on FAIR. Why? Because our churches are asking for it. Our churches are remarkable in responding to our FAIR projects. Donors, we have thousands of donors who give to FAIR. And so I think they're asking for us to do this because they trust us and maybe they won't trust someone else. We're working typically through our missions personnel or 21 partners that we have a clear understanding of their values and what they do. And we don't go outside of that so that we have a remarkable a level of confidence that the funding is going to be well used. That's the big problem with funding with humanitarian work. I'm learning more and more about it. So that profile of FAIR is going to be in the next 12 months. You just, if you watching the stuff that Steve sends out to you. You're going to hear more and more about it in a big way. Plus, I'll be honest, one of the big things is I want to reach to the 20 and 30-year-olds of our movement. And this is where, they're scratching. They're very cause-oriented in this whole area of justice, mercy, and humanitarian. And I don't want them to think of us as this old fuddy-duddy institution, which to some degree, some might say we are. I want to reach in their hearts and start scratching at some of the areas that my kids, my 20-year-olds, are really interested. I have a girl, Caitlin. She just graduated 18 months ago from a social justice and peace degree in political science. So you can imagine the conversations. I call her my little lefty, She's just gone to law school. She's in law school, and her desire is to work in immigration refugee law. And I could go to Caitlin, for instance, and say, honey, can I get you to consider supporting a couple who are going to go church plant in Spain, which we have from the Castros and the Ingers are just leaving. She's grown up in a pastor's home. She knows how important the church is. Or would you like to send $50 a month to the Anisis who are doing, missions work on a more humanitarian level in many respects with young girls who are, in real desperate need. I know where my daughter is going to put her money. I just know. And I'm not saying it's good, bad, or other. I just know. It's the realities. And so I'm hoping that FAIR may be another avenue for the younger end of your churches to say, this movement I'm a part of, they actually care about the stuff I care about. So you're going to hear a whole lot more about our involvement in humanitarian work in the next year. The next direction document, finish up real quick, Rob, is our Francophone direction document. And basically, I told you a little bit about our, Quebec is a huge mission. I mean, downtown Toronto is a huge mission. We got it all around us. We all know that. The rationale of Quebec is after 55 years in our French mission, 5 years ago, a decision was made that we were going to bring the French mission to end December 31st, 2014. I was one of the fellowship pastors out there saying, what idiot came up with that idea? I was upset. I thought, what are they thinking? I mean, Quebec is our mission field. Why would we not be doing work in our own country with Francophones? I didn't understand. Now, I'm born and raised in Montreal, so I'm a little partial, but I was an Anglophone living in Montreal. And so I came with a bit of an attitude when I arrived in this role, if I can just be a little open with you. And I had this attitude, but I went to Quebec and I started visiting some of these remarkable leaders who I've known many of them for over 20 years. And I listened to them and I realized, yeah, really, this thing has to come to an end. It seems fairly paternalistic for a bunch of Anglophones in a mission telling a bunch of Francophones how to do that ministry. And some of these guys are now third generation, second generation Christians, and some of them are some of the best leaders we've got in the fellowship anywhere in the country. They're sharp people. So I said, okay, so what do we do after the French mission? Come January 1st, 2015, and no one had an answer to that. So we didn't get that far. I thought, okay, we got to get that cleared up for our churches, for our donors, and I got to make sure that our regions are comfortable with us and our regional directors are comfortable. And so this is the summation. Again, it's a one-pager with a bit of this way they got an appendix or two added on that one. But it basically, in a nutshell, is saying this, that for 50 plus years, our French mission has run by our local churches or donors, individuals, basically supporting a missionary, a French church planter in Quebec. And we've got some remarkable church planters in Quebec. And you had that, like me, you had your French church planters' faces on your missions wall, and once in a very rare occasion you got to them coming to your church, but these guys are pastors, they can't leave their churches. And many of them are smaller churches, it's hard for them to come and visit. So it's not like international ministries that come back on furlough and can travel at all. It's been difficult for our French workers to break in and develop really close ties and relationships with their churches, in my humble opinion. So they will no longer be any French missionaries after the end of this year. There may be 2 or 3 that we just feel we need to continue, so it'll be a new arrangement for a few more years, or else the church might fold if we don't have it. And I'm committed to make sure that doesn't happen. But what the arrangement will be is National is going to promote and broker partnerships between Anglophone churches in the rest of Canada with Francophone church plants. But we don't manage that anymore. That's the region's job. And so the church planning director in that region, in this case in the Quebec region, he will manage those relationships. So that if a church in Vernon, BC, I remember sitting down with a pastor there at Starbucks, and he said, I would love us to get involved with that new church plant in LaSalle with Richard Wood. And the partnership is a true partnership. So what I'm hoping, to be quite frankly, is that the relationship won't be with a church with a missionary that you don't see very often, but now it will become churches adopting churches. Anglophone Canadians falling in love with Francophone Canadians and vice versa. And hopefully doing what we have failed to do as Canadians. But in Christ, we can fall in love with each other. And so, you know, pastors would exchange pulpits when they're ready to build. Tradespeople go and spend a week. French immersion kids in Vernon, BC go for 3 weeks or 6 weeks and, you know, work with that church plant. And if they go to the Gas Bay, again, I mean, it's like going to Pakistan. They go. It's so different. The culture is so different. It's a cross-cultural experience. Yeah. But then they come back and they're all excited talking to the adults, like, wonderful. And I'm hoping it's going to be good for the fellowship, that we start to fall in love with each other, because this fellowship is very loosey-goosey. And I'm traveling like crazy, as much as my wife lets me because of that. I have sensed in the last decade or more that our fellowship is unraveling. If I can be, again, vulnerable with you. And I'm just trying, I know it's all about relationship. I've known Ken here for 25 years. I've known Daryl since he was 15. He used to hang out with his older brother. But it's all about relationship. I'm a president of an organization. Guess what, gang? I got this much authority. I don't even have that much. I can't tell you what to do, Daryl. And guess what? You can't tell me, because we're Baptists. But as we fall in love, that brotherly love, influence is amazing. You know, I've known Bob for years. And it's by virtue of relationship that this thing works. So I'm hoping that relationship between English and French will be something that, I don't know, 15 years from now, people will start to notice something going on here, at least amongst the fellowship Baptists anyway, between French and English. So my prayer, I'll be very blunt, my prayer is that every fellowship church will adopt a French church plan. So I'm going to be shooting for you, Sam. Say, which church do you want to get a part of? I mean, I just took a group of pastors to Montreal, and I'm calling them Quebec Vision Tours. I'm doing them twice a year. You get yourself to Montreal, plane, train, automobile, walk, I don't care. Then I'll take care of you for 48 hours. I'll pay your way. And I'll introduce you to 8 to 10 different church planners and their locations. And say, you know what? That's the church that fits our church. We see a fit there. I just took our first 5 pastors on it in October, and all of them are going to partner. So pray about that, okay? Would you just pray? At least just pray about it. I mean, Liberty Village, they need Christ like crazy, Daryl. But I just hope your church will fall in love with the idea of seeing Francophones more for Christ. So that's that. The last item is chaplaincy. Chaplaincy ministry started in the 70s, and we've had just a great run with our chaplains. But I came on board about 2.5 years ago, and I basically went to our national council and I said, I'm very pro-chaplaincy. I was involved in the chaplaincy commission at one point. I was a chaplain at the airport, Pearson, in my first year of Bible school. I spent 2 years every Monday night. I was the chaplain on duty all over Pearson. Scared, 21 years old. I see they're evangelists. They do work that they get into places that often our local churches are not getting into. Airports, you know, armed services. We're just not getting there. They're getting in places, in workplaces. Corporate chaplaincy is huge. It's growing right now. So I'm committed, but I said, basically, we're a local church organization. And if this thing is not tied clearly, in my mind, connected to the local church, let's get out of the business. Because they can go get their credentialing from any number of other chaplaincy things. It's not like they'll be left in the lurch. And so what I hope you'll read when you read this directional document is that there's a clear connection with the local church. My hope and prayer, if I can just say it in summary, is this: that our chaplains will have a clear connection with preferably a Fellowship Baptist church or a Evangelical church of like mind, because there are some places where there aren't a Fellowship Baptist church where that chaplain serves. And that chaplain becomes a blessing, particularly that pastor. Where in so many of our churches are solo pastor-led, they have in essence not necessarily a staff member, but someone who is a confidant who can work with them and be a blessing to do some training, because our chaplains are great in evangelism, grief management, counseling, any number of things that come alongside, and then help you get your people missionally out into the community. Not necessarily just in his or her chaplain area, but generally speaking. That's the plan, and that's what our new chaplains our existing chaplains have just gone through a process since last April to re-sign as of December 31st, because you're required to stay within these boundaries, or else you're no longer a fellowship chaplain. Now, thankfully, some said no, most said yes. They want the accountability. They want the attachment. They're pining for it, is what we're doing. My example is in the 1990s, I pastored at Parkdale Baptist Church in Belleville, which is a fantastic church. When I arrived, there was a chaplain, and in Eastern Ontario, for some reason, they have a lot of jails and prisons. Don't know why. But Bill was a chaplain to the prisons and jails in that area. And I was overwhelmed, as young 30s, this church, and I overwhelmed with counseling. I said, you do a lot of counseling. If I give you an office down our new office wing, because we have this extra office, will you do some of my pastoral counseling? He said, I'd love to. 6 years later, Bill was probably doing about 30% of my counseling. People called him Pastor Bill. I never formally changed it. It was a term of endearment. Our support for him financially had risen because they saw the added value as he was serving in our church very clearly. And I imagine people were also supporting him outside, and I didn't know. And he was taking my people out into prisons, but also into ministry in the community. And I'd love to see that replicated in Fellowship Baptist churches, seeing the benefit of coming with a community worker who happens to be a chaplain. So that's an example of in my own experience. The only other thing I'd encourage you to do is pick up one of these. I'll just throw them around. This is Kareem and Rita. Rob, if you can come up. And Kareem and Rita have, they're Lebanese. They've lived in the Toronto area for about a decade, going to Barry's church at Willowdale Baptist Church, and felt called of God to go back to Lebanon. I mean, they were living the immigrant dream, doing quite well, doing very well. He's a sharp leader. And so he has gone back to Lebanon to be the executive director of an orphanage for young girls and teenage girls. And they are from this association. Kareem is going to be in country. He's had to go before we wanted him because the director left and they were without a leader. And so unfortunately, he had to leave earlier than we wanted him in the middle of his deputation. And so he's going to be back here mid-March to the end of April. Barry, is that correct? And looking for opportunities to just come and have breakfast with you, lunch, speak on a Sunday. Barry is your go-to person for that. He's got this wonderful mix of being a business-minded guy with a pastor's heart. Very sharp and very well spoken. So again, all I'm ever doing is asking you to pray about this. If it's something that you want to participate, they're part of your association. We'd love to see many of the churches in the Toronto Association get behind this. Okay.
He speaks Arabic?
Speaks Arabic. Yeah. Speaks English. Speaks at least one other language. I can't remember which it is.
French?
French. It's French.
Well, if he's from Lebanon, he might
yeah.
French.
But you'll enjoy it. He's a very animated guy. He's a sharp, creative thinker, entrepreneurial type of a guy. He's got big dreams for what he wants to do to jettison out of this orphanage and doing some other things too. Rob, sorry.
Don't be sorry. So thank you, Steve, for giving up some of your time for me. I think that was just your way to get me out of my office and be from behind all my papers, because this is not my comfort zone, being out in front of people, but here I am. So I want to give you a little bit of information about what I do at the fellowship. I won't tell you everything I do, because that will be boring, and you're probably getting hungry. But I want to highlight a few things, because I think a lot of what we do can be very beneficial to you. And a lot of you, I don't know many of you from seeing you, but I've probably talked to many of you on the phone or emailed you, because that's what we do behind the scenes of the fellowship, is work with some of you, with your churches, sometimes with your treasurers. So I'll give you a quick overview of what the services department does. And but first I'll tell you a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm a chartered accountant. I worked in public accounting for over 20 years. And then just over 8 years ago I made a rather major career move and took my accounting skills and other things that God has gifted me with and moved into ministry at the fellowship office. And it's been an exciting time for me. It's been great not having to go through tax season. It's not the only reason I made that change. In fact, I still do enough tax returns that I wonder if I actually did make a change. One of the enjoyments I have, though, is being able to use that financial ability that I have to work with church treasurers. And I wasn't going to talk much about that today, but I've probably talked to a few of your church treasurers. I usually get the call when things are in chaos or total confusion or somebody's got a major tax issue, and we won't point any fingers, but that person's in the room today. But I enjoy doing that, and I have enough expertise to at least give some advice. And I don't do tax returns for all of our pastors, but I have enough tax knowledge to be able to help some of them out. One of my goals when I took on this job was to be able to come alongside and assist church treasurers. And I don't do that a lot. Some of our regions have people in place that can do that. In Ontario, I probably get the majority of my calls. I enjoy doing that. I think church treasurers are the most undervalued, underrated people in churches. And quite often they're walking into a role that has been done by somebody who maybe didn't really know exactly what they were doing, didn't leave good records behind, and they volunteer to do something, and then they get into the middle of something that they're not even sure what they're doing. So we're able to give some advice and some help there. I know Godfrey and Bob at Fed Central like to try and do that as well, but they refer some of them to me, and other regions do that as well. So to me, I'm always looking for ways that I can encourage church treasurers and help them. I'm looking at doing a webinar at some point this year. I'm not sure if I'll find to do the speaking because I don't want to do that myself. But just to put something on our website that church treasurers can go on, at least to get an overview of what is this role that I walked into and what should I be doing with it. So that's one of the things that we're planning at the fellowship. Other things that I do now currently at the fellowship, and a lot of this, if you've seen me at one of our conventions, you've probably heard me say some of this before, but we manage the healthcare plan for the fellowship and the health and the pension plan. So those are two things that we do that we think is very important for churches. And my number one goal is that all churches take on the responsibility of supporting their pastors and their employees by providing a health care plan and a pension plan. My second goal is that they would look to us to meet that need. So it's not even my first goal that we do that. My first goal really is to educate churches that it is so important that you take that burden away from your pastors and your employees by providing health care and pension plans. And we think we have developed some pretty good plans at the fellowship, and we have a health care plan and a pension plan that has many of our fellowship employees involved in. In the pension world, I think we do what we can. It's hard to control it. We make 20 funds available, and you pick the ones you want to be in. We've had a couple of really good years in our pension plan. We had some really bad years before that, just with the way the economy is going. But in the area of healthcare, there's so many different ways of doing healthcare. We have our plan. We think it's a good plan. It's a nationwide plan, which it has huge advantages when we have the number of people that we can put into that plan. So one large claim from somebody in Ontario doesn't necessarily have a big negative impact on premiums the next year, because that's how the health care system works. It's all based on previous claims. Where in smaller groups, one claim can really have some serious impact in future claims. So we've had, again, a couple good years in our health care plan. We added vision 2 or 3 years ago, and in the last 2 years, I expected we'd actually have some increase in premiums because of that. We've had a very minimal increase the year after that, and we had a 0% increase last year. We were able to keep our rates exactly the same, which in the insurance world is actually our broker and the people we work with at Great-West Life are just like, that shouldn't be happening. So I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall one a year, but I mean, we've been able to enjoy some good years, and we think we have a pretty good plan there. So if you're not currently on any kind of a pension plan or health care plan, please encourage your church to check us out. And we think it's important that churches look after the pastors that way. So just really quickly, a few of the other things that we do. We have church loan programs at the fellowship that we are able to come alongside, assist churches with building projects. I think it used to be mainly geared to new builds, first-time builds, but we're able to help churches with renovations as well. We have limited funds, unfortunately, in that area, and we can only go up to $100,000, which doesn't help a lot of churches, especially if they're building a $5 million church or something. We're able to help Quebec a great deal, because you can buy amazing properties in Quebec for around $100,000. So we own a lot of property in Quebec right now. But we enjoy being able to help churches get through those hurdles to be able to get the buildings that they need to be able to do ministry. And we wish we could do more. I'm going to talk a few minutes about a foundation that we're developing that we hope to be able to generate the funds that will enable us to really boost that loan program up and be able to do a lot more. We organize and look after the annual conference that the fellowship puts on every year. Last year we were out in BC, so I recognize that many of you probably were not able to get there. And one of the things last year that we gave away was this book called See You Next Week by Gary Carter, who's one of our fellowship pastors. One of our sponsors, Broker Force, had purchased all these books to hand out, and we have a whole bunch left over because we didn't have the numbers there. So I brought a bunch with me, I think maybe enough for every church here. So we'll have these on this table after if you want to pick one up. But it's a great book, and we encourage you to take a copy back for your church. Which leads me into the next thing that I want to talk about, because this is relatively new for us. We have some affinity programs. Again, we're looking always for ways that we can benefit churches from being a part of the fellowship, or even to benefit members of churches in the fellowship. And so we've got right now 3 affinity programs that we're working with. We have Broker Force Insurance, which many of you have been with for a long time. In fact, they insure probably about 80% of all of the fellowship churches in the provinces that they are working in. And they're a great supporter of the fellowship, and they have a good program called Sanctuary Plus. So if your church is looking for church insurance and you're not already with them, check them out. I have a one-page, because that's apparently what we do now with one-page things. I didn't know that, but hey, I didn't bring my binder, so that's a good thing. So a one-page thing, just with some quick facts about these affinity programs. They're also available on our website, so you can check them out there as well. So they'll be up here on the table during lunch if you want to come and grab one. So I'm about to fly through these, and you can grab one of these if you want to check them out a little bit more. So Broker Force is one for church insurance. We've, in the last, I think it's been 3 or 4 years now, we've been working with Deeks Insurance for personal insurance. It's a great affinity program. Deeks Insurance is very unique in the insurance world. So we're talking now home insurance, car insurance. A long time ago, they realized that when they were just a really small company, that by dealing mostly with just Christians, that they were saving these big insurance companies all kinds of money, because Christians just were not making the kinds of claims that other people were. And when they kind of clued into that, they realized that they could form an evangelical group in the insurance world that just, in general, has cheaper rates. So they have that group going. They work with a number of different Christian organizations, and they are now working with us as well for the last 3 or 4 years. And so all we suggest is you check them out. Because we're not going to guarantee you're going to get cheaper rates. It worked for me. I saved a few $100s a year. But for the most part, they seem to have good rates. But both of these insurance companies that we work with have amazing service. And I just keep hearing stories over and over again about how much people appreciate the service. Broker Force, I heard of a church that had a fire in their church. They came alongside and helped them through that. We've had churches facing lawsuits that Broker Force has helped them with. And Deeks the same way with personal insurance. They're very good as fellowship individuals. So Danny Deeks at Deeks and Roger Wingfield at Broker Force are fellowship guys that care about fellowship, they care about our churches and our people, and they're trying to provide a service that will benefit them. But at the same time, they don't want to have you go up and stand in the pulpit and tell other people to get your insurance at Deeks. I appreciate that about them, that they take a bit of a laid-back approach. They realize word of mouth is the way to get this out. So they also have a special package for pastors. I don't know much about that, but I saw that on their website. So again, there's a phone number on there. Check them out if you're looking for home or car insurance and see what they can do for you. And they are great supporters of us as well. And the more that they can generate business from fellowship individuals, the more that they're able to support us. And so it's a win-win-win for everybody, in our opinion. And we're really enjoying these partnerships that we've been able to get. The other one doesn't benefit us at all, but it's with Enterprise International, and we are just, we're always calling these kinds of companies to see if there's anything we can do for fellowship people. I've tried with hotels, but I find hotels are all individually owned, and they can't get into a big national corporate plan like we want to, but we're always looking for more that we can do. Enterprise International, we do have an arrangement with them. If you're renting a car, check them out. The page on our website has the code you need just to get the fellowship discount. It doesn't always give you a cheaper rate, but quite often it does. So those are some of the quick things that we're doing. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the foundation. I briefly mentioned that. And we're getting closer to having this thing a reality. We've been working on it for quite a long time. Anytime lawyers and the government are involved with something, that just drags on forever. So we do now have a corporation called the Fellowship, but it's not yet a registered charity, and that's the longest part of the process, and that's what we're currently working on. When we receive that, then you're going to hear a lot more about it. My goal for the foundation is, it's not just my goal, but there's now a board, thankfully, I don't have to do it all anymore, that their real dream for that is that this is going to be just a great place for the national, for regions, for churches, for individuals, to put money to get a guaranteed rate of return, and know that your money is going to be then used to help other churches. And so as that foundation can generate funds, then we can really ramp up being able to lend churches money to do various projects that they're interested in. So that's really quickly just a few of the things that we're doing in the services department at the Fellowship, and it's great to see you, and I hope you get to know a bit of you a bit more over lunch.
Thanks. Well, thank you very much. They are